Welcome to TGIF.
Can you believe we are 2 books down and a lot of books to go through the Bible? We are starting Leviticus today. Hopefully you were with us for Genesis and Exodus. If not, they're on YouTube, Centenary YouTube channel. You can go back and catch up on those. But Leviticus, how exciting is that? A bunch of laws. Are y'all excited to join us for these next 4 episodes? Well, just thinking of all these laws, I am so glad that I don't have to, when I don't follow the laws, I don't have to do the things they used to have to do back in the day in the law, and that is
An offering.
And I'm not talking about I want to offer my life to Jesus and each and every day, but the offerings we're going to talk about, if we're in the Old Testament, you probably have a good idea what we're going to talk about. But we have so much that we can learn, even though it's the Old Testament, it still matters.
It does matter. We are in Leviticus, and we're going to look at chapter 9, because we're doing chapters 1 through 9. So we are at the end of this section. And it's chapter 9, verse 22. Aaron lifted his hands towards the people and blessed them. And he came down after sacrificing the sin offering, the burnt offering, and the offering of well-being. I really like that last one, though, huh?
Yeah.
Offering of well-being.
Ooh, I think there's a sermon in
like
that.
But it's interesting as we kind of come into Leviticus. We're going to frame this a little bit. The very word in Hebrew, Leviticus, means he called. He,
I love
the Lord,
that.
called.
Yes.
The Lord called. And we know the Lord called Moses, the burning bush, but the Lord also, in this moment, called Moses into the tent of meeting to go over with the plan, right? The game plan. Obviously, you can't just turn a bunch of people loose to say, well, good luck, and pay attention to me and me only. So that's why we get these rules, these laws, and they can be overwhelming. So what we want you to do through this is just kind of flow with it, kind of go with it, and know that this was a time, a place, and a culture that God was working with and trying to help them to understand what it meant to be totally devoted to God. And so Leviticus, that he called Moses, he calls us. God calls us. According to the book of Leviticus, it is actually the Levi, which would be from the family of Aaron. Aaron was whose brother? Moses. And so we have these brothers. And so Aaron becomes the priest. His family is the Levites. They kind of take up the mantle as God has called them specifically to do this. And we're going to learn in next chapter, it doesn't go well. But we'll jump ahead. Moses is the author of this book. Time frame, 1445 BC. Before Christ was born, 1445. A lot of years still to go before we get to Christ's birth. So it contains, as you said, many laws. And what I like about it is it's really trying to help the Hebrew people stay safe, stay healthy, and live a peaceful life. That sounds great.
It seems like we could use that today.
I know, I love it. And it's meant to protect God's people from, in the day, germs, meant to protect them from unhealthy living. Keep us from the unclean things of the world.
Ooh.
And so here we have the chapters, you'll read them. There's burnt offering, there's grain offering, there's a fellowship offering, there's sin offering, there's trespass offering, and then the regulations, and then cleanliness, preparation for the priest. So a lot in there. But again, remember the context that you're reading in, and remember that God is trying to help his people to follow. Remember, they come out of Egypt, so more than likely they had grown accustomed to some of the idolatry in Egypt and maybe even drawn in some of those customs. So God is trying to cut them off from that. And anytime you get caught up from something, you know how hard it is to get back into reading your Bible, get back into praying and doing all the things that God calls us to do. So very helpful, I think, for all of us to learn from this book.
Yeah, because we're still today, God calls us to live healthy, to take care of our bodies, to treat others with respect. All of those things still play in today. They just look different. And it's ultimately that we are acknowledging God in all of it and connecting with God each and every day more and more and more, because then he ultimately accomplishes his purpose by us connecting to him. So being thankful for our health is a connection to God.
But also realizing it's a responsibility too. So don't go eat a bunch of junk food. Well, okay, now what do you mean?
I just watched what you ate for lunch. Yeah, exactly. We are called, we don't do so well at taking care of our bodies, but it's an ongoing process that he's calling us to. I'm just so glad we don't have to do all the burnt offerings and those things that they did back in the day, but we need to not take for granted our relationship with God, and that God is still calling us according to his purpose for his people, for kingdom work here on earth.
Yeah, when Jesus comes on the scene, Jesus isn't, he basically is overriding, but his law will make you and help you to carry out all of those laws, which is to love each other. And so really, he's not doing away with them, but we no longer have to read them and live them out, because by the very nature of the new calling to follow Jesus, we are living them out, and we should be living these healthy lives. So, you know, that idea of how do we live good lives is fine, but we want to be talking about godly lives. I mean, so much deeper than just, you know, making sure that you're eating right.
And I think if we look at it, our lives are an offering to God.
I like that.
Where they were bringing all the sacrifices for this, that, and the other. If our life is an offering to God, that means every part of our life plays a role.
It does.
Our time, our finances, our gifts, our talents. So, do we really offer our lives up to the Lord each and every day? I mean, that's a hard question. I mean, we can get up, we can pray, we can get up and we can read our Bible, but what are we doing with our time? What are we doing with the money that we're blessed with? You know, there's a purpose in all of it. So if you say, you know, I'm here for you, Lord, whatever you need, that means your time, your money, your talents, everything. I mean, are you really okay to say that? And it's not like if you don't do all of these things, God's going to, you know, curse you down. It's not that, but the joy that comes from that connection when you're offering yourself to the Lord, when you're seeing the Lord at work in and through all things, when you're looking for God at work and acknowledging it and sharing it with others, you're connecting deeper to God. And isn't that ultimately what he was trying to do in the Old Testament, is calling his people to something more than just them and the culture around them.
And to do with joy. I love when you said that, because that's the key. Is a lot of times we have a lot of rules to follow. We have a lot of things that people just think, oh man, the Bible, it's just another bunch of rules I got to follow. When actually it's a way of living that brings great joy, because you're an offering to God, and God is using you in so many different ways. That's exciting. So
with that, our question, how do you offer yourself to the Lord each day? And when we do that, it's Lord, sometimes it's Lord, help me get through this day. Maybe it's a test coming up, waiting for a diagnosis, all of those things that we're connecting with God every day. But how do you offer yourself up beyond that? When you leave, are you looking for places you can engage God at work? Are you looking for places you can volunteer at the church or do something extra with a nonprofit organization? Like out there right now, working on the water. Oh my goodness, our little flood we had during VBS. Like that is just using your time to do those things. Because it ultimately blesses you. So rules, I'm glad we don't really have, I wouldn't call them rules.
No.
It's sacrificial living, offering ourselves up to the Lord, thanking the Lord that he sent his son Jesus for the forgiveness when we mess up, because we're going to mess up.
Yeah, I would not want to have an altar out there. We have to burn a lot of
no,
offerings.
Absolutely not.
Much better way.
So Leviticus, we are here on to episode 2 next week. So start at chapter 10 and see how far you get, and you'll be with us. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time on TGIF. Bye.